and then you have idle crouching, then you have idle crouch aiming. Okay, and this is simply crouching without the iron sights on. This is crouching with the iron sights on. And then you have the good old plain idle where he's just standing and doing nothing. He's not aiming. He just got the gun in his hand, but he's not doing anything else. And then you have the 90, the crouching 90 degrees left, and death from right, and about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 death animations. So pretty good. And death from back. That's okay. That's awesome. All right. So quite a lot of work for us to do because we can pick and choose the animations that we want to implement, as in for the blend space and stuff like that. So I'm going to close that and let's get started because we have imported them all. We have all the resources that we need. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so there are two things that we're going to need to create. We're going to need to create animation blueprint, an animation blueprint, and an animation blend space. So we'll get started with the blueprint first. So inside the character, we have the animations, and then I'll create a new folder so that I can organize things better. And I'll say, I don't know, skeletal meshes, or skeletal mesh, I don't know. And you have this, that's a skeletal mesh. And I believe I'll drag that in and put it in here, move here, and then I'll right click and I'll create a new folder called physics assets, right? We're not going to use it anyways, so I'll just drop it here, and then I'll right click and I'll create a new folder called skeleton, and I'll drop in the skeleton here, move here, and there's also a soldier anim which I can just drop it inside here. All right, it's kind of useless, but it came along with the mesh, so I'm not going to mess around. And then I'll just go over and I'll create a materials folder, and then I'll drag, there's just one material, so I'll just drag this guy and drop him here. That's move here, and I'll go over and I'll change this name of the material to m_soldier body, right? And then come back here and then create a new folder called textures, and this will have all the textures. So this is the diffuse texture, this is a normal, this is a specular, soldier head, I don't know why, soldier head 6, and oh, that's the material. Okay, so this will be m_soldier head, right? And I'll just drop him inside materials and move here, and now all that remains are all the textures. So you have the soldier head diffuse, normal, specular, and soldier body diffuse, normal, and specular. Pick them all up and drop them inside textures and move here. So now it's all pretty well organized and systematically set up into its respective folders. Now all we have to do now is we have to create blueprints, a folder called blueprints, and a folder called blend spaces. Okay, and inside the blueprint I'm going to create a new animation blueprint. So I'll right click and I'll go over to animation, and out here I'll click on animation blueprint, and now it's going to ask us to select the skeleton. Since we are working with the soldier skeleton, I'll click on that and I'll say okay, and I'll name this soldier anim BP. Okay, so that is short for animation blueprint, and instantly right away you can see that it's got the model of the skeletal mesh of our soldier. I double click on that, you can see this guy, and of course if you have worked on if you have seen any of the previous courses on Unreal, we created a top-down hack and slash game, so we did work with animation blueprints and blend spaces. Okay, and so this is what it looked like, and since we selected the soldier skeleton, it picked up the soldier mesh and everything, and it put it up here for our preview. Very convenient. Okay, so now that we have this is, since you've been working with blueprints for so long, you must be aware of this by now. This is the event graph, and then you have this anim graph. And so inside the anim graph, this is again another graph, but the nodes are slightly different here. It's more related to animations, but this event graph is more of also more related to animations, but you don't have the event pick and play or anything, but that's more context sensitive. It's more related to the context of animations. So in this anim graph, this is the final result. So if you just to draw a comparison, if I go over to the material editor, just click on soldier body, and okay, that's a mess. All right, so this is what you have, right? And of course, if I click on this guy, if if I go back here, click on meshes, skeleton meshes, click on this guy, come here, click on the teapot, and that should be applied to the soldier. There you go. Okay, so that's neat. Okay, so this is what this is, right? I mean, obviously you can't bring in your event begin play or anything, and you have this final result, and where everything gets plugged into all of these little pins, and then it reflects on the material that you're working on. Quite similarly, I'll just save this and close that once that's saved and applied. Okay, why is it taking so long? Okay, there you go. Alright, so inside this, now if I go over to the anim browser, asset browser, and if I bring in an idle, and if I bring in, let's say, a jump up, okay, so I can connect this onto the result. When I compile this, and you can see that this guy is constantly on idle. Okay, so now what if I want to play also the jump up while he's doing idle, which is strange, but I want to try. So I want to say, let's also want to play jump up, and I want to see whether it blends. So you can see that once you bring that in and compile, then the idle goes away and this jump up is constantly playing on a loop. But this is not what we want, because this just lets us play one animation at a time. Instead, what we want is we want to figure out what kind of animations can be played at what time, and when, and how long, and how do you want to blend an idle state of the character with an aiming animation. So how do you want to blend that? It shouldn't be snappy, it should be nice and smooth and seamless. And because all these animations are realistic, we make the best use of the realism in these animations to create a perfect blend between any two animations. Because when a normal person, when he's running and when he comes to a stop, he has to have some sort of motor movements, like the whole body pushes forward a little bit, it leans and it forms an angle, and then he comes back. So all of those things can be done very well using blend spaces, and that's what we'll work on. But before that, we'll also have to work on some animation blueprints, and we have to work on a state machine. And state machine is what's going to help us determine when to play what and how much and what's the blend factor and all of that good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to cut the video short now, and the next video when we return, we're going to talk about state machines. We're going to create the state machines, and we'll get started with the walking and the running and the idle animations, and then we'll move on to the aiming and the crouching and the death animations and the jumping and all of that good stuff. So a long way to go. So I'm going to cut short the video. When we return, we'll start working on the state machine.